Robert Reiner's inner circle has finally cracked open the vault, spilling what really drove his son to the edge. But before that truth smacks you in the face, you've got to see the intense pressure cooker that built one of Hollywood's most mysterious and powerful minds. Robert De Niro, born Robert Anthony De Niro, came into the world on August 17, 1943, right in the heart of Manhattan, New York City. Art wasn't some cute pastime in his home, it was survival. His parents, Virginia Admiral and Robert De Niro Sr., weren't just weekend painters, they were deep in New York's gritty art scene, obsessed, disciplined, and consumed by creation. That house didn't just have art on the walls, it breathed it every second, every argument, every sleepless night. Even after the marriage broke apart, the atmosphere didn't soften. It stayed electric, demanding, and heavy with emotion.
I like this that in different towns, different areas of Sicily, it's different. The dialect is different.
De Niro grew up surrounded by real struggle, watching people break themselves for their craft. That kind of environment doesn't just raise a kid, it forges one. He learned early to read silence, to spot tension, to feel emotion before anyone even spoke. He was being trained, without realizing it, to understand the hidden language of people long before cameras ever found him. And then came the streets of Little Italy, the final layer of his education. De Niro soaked in every sharp glance, every whispered code, every unspoken rule of respect. That raw street energy got under his skin and never left. Years later, it would explode on screen, making his performances feel too real, almost unsettling in their honesty. By the time he hit his teenage years, De Niro wasn't playing around anymore. He was already locked in, chasing greatness like his life depended on it.
San Francisco to test with him or work with him or whatever. So I was ready to do that. And then they called and just said, it's okay, you don't have to come, you have the part. It was great, it was interesting.
Acting wasn't some short-lived hobby for De Niro. It was survival, plain and simple. He didn't just dream about being an actor, he trained like every breath depended on it. From elite acting programs scattered throughout New York to late nights spent dissecting every human emotion, he wasn't chasing fame, he was chasing truth. Under the legendary Stella Adler, he learned that acting wasn't about memorizing lines or hitting marks, it was about living inside the skin of another person. She pushed him hard, demanding raw emotion, real pain, and honesty that cut deep. De Niro wasn't learning to perform, he was learning to be. Every sigh, every pause, every eruption had to mean something. It had to come from the gut. Then came the actor's studio, where Lee Strasberg took that fire and turned it into an inferno.
And, we hit it off, and I thought, oh, I get it. I get what happened. I get how this works. And so we changed it. We changed the ending.
They stayed together.
And the scene that you see where Billy runs in to the New Year's Eve, that speech that he gave is Billy wrote that.
Method acting under Strasberg wasn't for the weak. It was brutal, full-contact mental warfare. You had to bleed for the role, lose yourself in it, and claw your way back out. Those years built what fans and critics would later call the De Niro method: total immersion, dangerous preparation, no shortcuts, no safety nets. By the late 1960s and early 1970s, his film roles were small but powerful. You could feel that hidden storm brewing. There was something unpredictable in his silence, something waiting to explode. Hollywood finally snapped to attention when De Niro joined forces with Martin Scorsese for Mean Streets in 1973. The film was raw, gritty, and pulsing with real danger. His performance didn't look acted, it looked possessed. And then came The Godfather Part II in 1974, the role that would seal his legend. Playing young Vito Corleone, he barely spoke English, relying on silence, posture, and tiny facial shifts that screamed power and pain. Every glance had meaning, and Hollywood had never seen anything like it. The result? Controlled, precise, and explosively powerful. A performance so sharp it earned De Niro his first Academy Award. That win didn't just crown him as talented, it proved he was fearless.
I understand that the end of this movie was changed after you met Michelle.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
What set De Niro apart from everyone else wasn't just his skill, it was his obsession with truth. When it came to Taxi Driver, he didn't just act like a cabbie, he became one. He got a legit taxi license and spent months driving through New York's gritty streets, soaking up the loneliness, frustration, and quiet rage of real life behind the wheel. So when he said, "You talking to me?" that wasn't a line, that was instinct exploding on screen. It was the raw voice of a man who'd lived inside that madness. Then came Raging Bull, and De Niro's dedication turned almost mythic. He trained like an actual boxer, grinding through sweat and pain until his movements looked real, not rehearsed. Then, when the role demanded it, he packed on serious weight to show the character's downfall, a physical and emotional transformation that was brutal to watch, but impossible to forget. That performance won him his second Academy Award and locked his reputation as a man who'd destroy comfort just to reach the truth. Through the 80s and 90s, he kept dropping classics like it was second nature. The King of Comedy, Once Upon a Time in America, Brazil, Goodfellas, Cape Fear, Casino, each one peeling back another layer of the mystery that is Robert De Niro. In Goodfellas, De Niro's Jimmy Conway didn't need to yell or show off. His danger was quiet, chilling, and razor-sharp. He was calm, patient, and always calculating, proving that real power doesn't have to scream. That icy control made Jimmy even scarier, the kind of man who could smile one second and end you the next, unforgettable and haunting. Then came the twist nobody expected. In the late 1990s and early 2000s, De Niro flipped the script and jumped straight into comedy. And just like that, he owned it. He showed the world that intensity isn't a cage, it's fuel. In Analyze This, Meet the Parents, and The Intern, he turned that same energy into perfect comedic timing and sharp self-awareness. Suddenly, the man who terrified audiences was making them laugh and still keeping that edge. It was genius. Those roles weren't some paycheck grab or creative burnout. They were power moves, the kind that only a true legend can pull off. De Niro was confident enough to poke fun at his own image, to mock the myth while still being it. That takes real authority, the kind that can't be faked. But the story didn't stop when the cameras cut. Off-screen, De Niro turned into a major force, a serious producer, a respected director, and a cultural heavyweight who knew exactly how to move the industry. His presence carried weight everywhere he went, both on set and far beyond it. After the September 11th attacks, De Niro didn't just send condolences, he took action. He co-founded the Tribeca Film Festival to help bring life back to Lower Manhattan, and it wasn't some PR stunt or image grab, it was real commitment. Tribeca quickly became more than a film event. It was a heartbeat for the neighborhood and a powerful platform for bold, independent filmmakers ready to take creative risks. As a director, De Niro kept things personal and deeply grounded. His 1993 film A Bronx Tale wasn't packed with flashy effects or Hollywood gloss. It was raw, heartfelt, and drawn straight from his own memories growing up in the Bronx. It tackled loyalty, temptation, and those quiet make-or-break choices that define a person's path. De Niro never chased spectacle. He chased truth, the kind that hits home because it's real. Even as the years rolled on, he refused to fade away. Performances in Silver Linings Playbook, The Irishman, and Killers of the Flower Moon proved he was still fearless, facing age, regret, and history with brutal honesty. The Irishman in particular cut deep, returning to his old crime world roots, but this time stripped of swagger and replaced with reflection and consequence. It was De Niro showing the heavy cost of living by shortcuts, a haunting mirror of choices that can't be undone. Off-screen, his personal life unfolded with the same complexity as his films, full of reinvention, loyalty, and growth. In 1976, he married actress and singer Diane Abbott during a time when fame was exploding and pressure never let up. Together, they welcomed their son, Raphael De Niro, who decided to carve his own lane, not in acting, but in real estate, staying loosely tied to Hollywood while building his own legacy. De Niro's sense of family ran way deeper than blood. It was about loyalty, love, and showing up when it mattered most. When he adopted Diane Abbott's daughter, Drina De Niro, it wasn't some symbolic gesture. It was real, a permanent commitment. Drina went on to explore acting, modeling, and filmmaking, often saying that De Niro was her rock, a steady protector who always had her back no matter what. Their bond stayed strong even when the marriage itself didn't. By 1988, De Niro and Abbott went their separate ways, closing one chapter without walking away from responsibility. He stayed involved, supportive, and fully present in his kids' lives, proof that real commitment doesn't vanish just because a marriage ends. He made sure his children knew that family wasn't something that broke, it was something you stood by. Then came another shift in the mid-1990s when De Niro began a relationship with actress and model Toukie Smith. In 1995, they welcomed twin sons, Julian and Aaron De Niro, through surrogacy, marking a new phase of fatherhood that he guarded fiercely. Despite his massive fame, he kept their lives private and protected, determined to give them something close to normal. In 1997, De Niro married Grace Hightower, a philanthropist and former flight attendant with drive and heart that matched his own. Their connection was built on shared ambition, values, and a deep love for family. In 1998, they welcomed their son Elliot De Niro, and later, De Niro spoke openly about Elliot's autism, using his platform to push for more understanding and compassion. Even when he and Hightower separated later that same year, their story didn't just end, it took a new, unexpected turn that showed how complex real love and loyalty can be. They found their way back to each other and renewed their vows in 2004, a move that said everything about who De Niro really is. It wasn't about publicity or image, it was about second chances, emotional endurance, and rebuilding after life's cracks. That decision showed a man who believed that love, even when tested, was worth fighting for. Their family grew again in 2011 with the birth of their daughter Helen Grace De Niro through surrogacy, and becoming a father once more in his late 60s didn't slow him down one bit. If anything, it sharpened him. He threw himself into fatherhood with the same drive and dedication that he's always brought to his craft. Over the years, De Niro has opened up about how fatherhood changed him. It grounded him, gave him perspective, and forced humility to take center stage. It reminded him that purpose isn't found in trophies or headlines, but in the quiet moments that truly matter. Every chapter of his life, the marriages, the separations, the reconciliations, the decades of parenting, built a mosaic of a man who refused to let fame swallow his humanity. Through it all, one truth stayed constant. No matter how complicated or unconventional, family was always the heart of who De Niro was. Then came the silence that shook Hollywood to its core, the shocking discovery at Rob Reiner's Brentwood home. The impact spread fast, far beyond Los Angeles, leaving friends and longtime collaborators struggling to make sense of it all. People who'd known Reiner for decades were stunned, unable to reconcile the man they admired with the chaos unfolding. Among those hit hardest was Robert De Niro, his close friend for years. When De Niro finally spoke, his words carried a rare emotional weight, hinting that something dark had been building quietly behind the scenes long before the world found out. This wasn't random. The cracks had been there, hiding in plain sight. De Niro spoke softly, his voice tight with emotion, every word heavy with restraint. He said, "When something like this happens, people want a single moment, a single trigger." He paused, letting the silence hang before adding, "That's not how these things work. They build, they fracture, they erode." His words hit like a quiet truth bomb. The events of December 14, 2025 shattered a family and sent shockwaves through Hollywood, leaving everyone stunned and searching for answers. For those who had sensed the slow, hidden strain over the years, nothing about it felt sudden. When Roy Reiner showed up at the Brentwood home after realizing her parents had missed a routine appointment, she expected something small, a mix-up maybe, confusion. What she found instead was something no one could prepare for. The sight inside that house marked her forever. In shock, she ran, fleeing the chaos before learning the full, tragic scope of what had unfolded that day. In an instant, Roy became a witness to the unthinkable, the fallout from years of quiet tension that had never been faced head-on. De Niro later reflected on that pain, speaking with a heavy heart. He said, "That's something no child should ever have to see," he quietly said. "That image doesn't leave you. It becomes part of you, whether you want it or not." His words carried the weight of someone who had seen too much of life's dark corners.
As investigators began piecing together the timeline, attention turned to Nick Reiner, who had been living with his parents in the months leading up to the tragedy. Friends recalled how Nick's behavior had grown more volatile. Small outbursts, strange silences, signs of a storm building beneath the surface. De Niro never made excuses for what happened, but he spoke openly about what he felt had been ignored for too long. A slow, painful unraveling that everyone sensed, but no one stopped. "There was pain there," De Niro said quietly, his tone cutting through the noise. "Deep pain." And he didn't sugarcoat what that meant. When pain gets ignored or brushed aside, it doesn't vanish, it festers. It turns inward until it eats you alive, or it explodes outward, taking everything in its path. One haunting moment that everyone kept coming back to was the Christmas party hosted by Conan O'Brien, just one night before everything fell apart. Witnesses said Nick Reiner seemed off that evening, restless, agitated, and visibly shaken. The tension thickened fast. When Rob Reiner confronted his son about his behavior, the room froze. Guests exchanged uneasy glances, and even De Niro, standing quietly nearby, felt the weight of something breaking beneath the surface. That confrontation wasn't just a father checking his son, it was years of buried strain erupting in public. The kind of moment that tells you there's more going on than anyone wants to admit. De Niro later summed it up perfectly. That moment wasn't discipline, it was years of bottled frustration spilling out for everyone to see. And once pressure like that hits the air, there's no shoving it back down. The damage is done. After Roy Reiner called the authorities, her next move showed just how close her father's circle really was. She reached out to Billy Crystal. And without hesitation, Billy and his wife rushed straight to the Reiner home. That kind of urgency said everything. Rob Reiner wasn't just respected, he was loved. De Niro later described Billy's reaction as pure heartbreak, adding, "We all felt like we failed him somehow." The guilt, the grief, it was unbearable, and the silence that followed said more than words ever could. De Niro admitted softly, "You look back and think, what did we miss? What signs did we explain away?" He paused before adding, "And why?" The silence after that question said it all. The truth was uncomfortable. People ignored the warning signs because facing them would have meant admitting how bad things really were. When Nick Reiner was arrested later that day, it wasn't the beginning of the story. It was the final spark in a fire that had been burning for years beneath the surface. De Niro spoke with deep restraint, refusing to feed into the media frenzy. He didn't want shock value or gossip, he wanted understanding. "This isn't a story about fame or Hollywood," he said firmly. "It's about a family. It's about mental health. It's about what happens when love and fear share the same space for too long." His words hit hard because they cut past the noise. In the days that followed, De Niro pushed for compassion, not excuses, not blind sympathy, but honest understanding.
He reminded people that you can grieve and still ask hard questions. If we don't ask how it got this far, he said, then we're just waiting for it to happen again. The line landed heavy, not blaming anyone, but challenging everyone to look closer, to actually see the pain hiding behind the smiles. For De Niro, losing Rob Reiner wasn't just losing a friend, it was losing a piece of history, a bond that went back decades. It was a brutal reminder that even lives full of laughter, success, and connection can hide unbearable weight underneath. De Niro said quietly, "We tell ourselves strong people will ask for help. Sometimes they don't, and sometimes by the time they do, the damage is already done." That truth lingered, haunting, raw, and painfully real, a warning that what we choose not to see can cost us everything. If this story hit you, show some love, like, subscribe, share, and drop a comment below. Let's keep this conversation alive and make sure no pain goes unseen.